There's something undeniably powerful about being in control, about calling the shots and watching others follow. For some, the urge to boss people around isn't just about getting things done, it's deeper, rooted in psychology. At its core, the desire to dominate often stems from a need for validation. When someone exerts control over others, it reinforces their sense of importance, feeding their ego. It's a way to mask insecurities. By commanding obedience, they convince themselves and others that they're competent, even superior. Then there's the thrill of power itself. Studies show that having authority triggers dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. For some, this rush becomes addictive. The more they control, the more they crave it. But not all control is overt. Some people micromanage under the guise of helping, disguising their dominance as concern. It's a subtle way to maintain influence while avoiding blame. If things go wrong, they can always say, "I was just trying to guide you." Of course, not everyone who takes charge is power-hungry. True leaders inspire rather than dictate. But for those who relish bossing others around, it's rarely about efficiency. It's about filling a void, one order at a time. And perhaps that's the most telling part. The louder someone demands obedience, the more uncertain they likely are beneath the surface. Because real confidence doesn't need to bark orders, it earns respect without force. So the next time someone can't stop telling others what to do, remember, it's not just about control, it's about what they're trying to prove, to you and to themselves. The psychology of domination doesn't stop at mere ego or insecurity. It often cloaks itself in righteousness. History is littered with those who, in the name of morality, in the name of God, have positioned themselves as the arbiters of truth while silencing dissent. I'm righteous, you're not. This mindset turns belief systems, whether religious, ideological, or even scientific, into weapons of control rather than tools for growth. Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, warned of this very danger. He believed that true spirituality and psychology should serve as mirrors for self-reflection, not hammers to judge others. In The Undiscovered Self, Jung argued that when people project their own unconscious flaws onto others under the guise of morality, they create division rather than enlightenment. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls, he wrote. Yet instead of introspection, many wield their beliefs, religious, political, or intellectual, as a means to dominate, insisting, "This isn't me speaking, it's the prophet, the Bible, the science, the logic." This behavior isn't unique to any one ideology. Friedrich Nietzsche observed how morality is the best mask of power. In On the Genealogy of Morals, he dissected how those in positions of influence reframe their desires as divine or absolute truths. The same pattern repeats across history. Religious zealots invoking scripture to justify oppression, political ideologues claiming scientific inevitability to silence opposition, and self-help gurus using psychology to shame rather than heal. Even if religion vanished tomorrow, even if science were discarded, the human impulse to boss in the name of something greater would persist. Because at its core, this isn't about the belief system, it's about the unexamined ego dressing itself in borrowed authority. Jung's solution was radical self-honesty. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. If someone truly believes in their moral or intellectual cause, the first test should be, am I using this to elevate myself or to genuinely guide? Because in the end, the loudest moralists are often the least self-aware. And as long as humans exist, there will always be those who mistake their own voice for the voice of God, or reason, or progress. The tool changes, but the hunger for control remains the same. The question is, will we fall for the illusion or see through it? The human mind is a prisoner of its own making, trapped in rigid beliefs shaped by society, tradition, and unconscious narratives we mistake for absolute truth. To break free from these mental constraints, thinkers like Jung, Nietzsche, and Hegel offer a powerful approach: dialectical thinking. This method involves deliberately confronting opposing ideas to shatter our illusions of certainty. At its core is Hegel's framework of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, where every belief thesis inherently contains its contradiction, antithesis, and only by wrestling with both can we achieve higher understanding, synthesis. For instance, while one might believe morality comes from divine command, thesis, its opposite claims morality is a human construct for survival, antithesis. The synthesis emerges when we recognize morality as arising from both practical human needs and our transcendent aspirations toward higher ideals. Nietzsche built upon this foundation by challenging us to examine the origins of our most cherished convictions. In The Gay Science, he urges readers to question whether their beliefs were truly theirs or merely inherited dogma. His method involves three radical steps. First, exposing the cultural and historical roots of our beliefs. Second, daring to imagine their opposites might contain truth. And third, embracing the creative chaos this confrontation produces. For as he famously wrote, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." This isn't nihilism, but rather a path to intellectual liberation from society's simplistic binaries of good versus evil. Jung complemented this approach by focusing on our psychological resistance to challenging our own beliefs. His concept of the shadow, those rejected aspects of ourselves we deny, explains why we cling so fiercely to dogma. We fear what we've been conditioned to reject. Jung's method begins with noticing our emotional reactions, as what makes us defensive often points to shadow material. He then encourages actively engaging with opposing viewpoints, the rationalist exploring spirituality, the religious believer confronting atheism. The goal isn't victory, but integration, as Jung observed. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The collective wisdom from these thinkers reveals that certainty is wisdom's greatest enemy. True intellectual freedom requires us to doubt our deepest convictions, sincerely engage with opposing ideas, and synthesize rather than simply choose between alternatives. As Hegel observed, truth emerges not from thesis or antithesis alone, but from their reconciliation. This process demands courage, the willingness to let old beliefs die so that higher understanding might be born. Are we brave enough to endure this transformative friction, to hold opposing truths in tension until they yield something greater? The path to expanded consciousness begins when we stop fearing contradiction and start thinking dialectically. Human existence is fundamentally paradoxical. We are physical creatures governed by biological needs, yet perpetually drawn towards something beyond material existence. This tension between our earthly nature and higher aspirations manifests most profoundly in how we conceptualize divinity, morality, and reason. Each of these contains its own inherent contradictions that demand reconciliation for a complete understanding of truth. The divine command theory of morality presents us with a fundamental tension. On one side stands the thesis that goodness is defined by God's will, exemplified in religious traditions like the Ten Commandments, which posit moral absolutes from a transcendent source. Its antithesis emerges in secular morality, where thinkers like Nietzsche and Hume argue ethics are merely human constructs for social survival, embodied in philosophies like utilitarianism's greatest happiness principle. The synthesis reveals morality as both immanent and transcendent, shaped by practical human needs for cooperation and fairness, yet simultaneously expressing our innate yearning for ideals like justice and compassion that feel divinely inspired. Kant's categorical imperative and Jung's archetypes both reflect this dual nature of moral understanding. Similarly, the conflict between pure logic and mystical experience presents another dialectical challenge. The Enlightenment's worship of provable facts, Descartes' Dawkins, forms the thesis, while contemplative traditions, Zen, Sufism, and thinkers like Meister Eckhart present the antithesis that truth must be felt beyond logic. The synthesis shows reason not as opposed to transcendence, but as a pathway to it. What Hegel called grasping the absolute through dialectical reason, or Einstein's wonder at the universe's comprehensibility. The free will versus determinism debate follows the same pattern. The thesis of radical free will, central to existentialism and Abrahamic religions, contends with the antithesis of strict determinism, supported by neuroscience and materialists. The synthesis emerges in concepts like Spinoza's freedom through understanding necessity or Jung's individuation process, recognizing our choices as emerging from both conscious intention and unconscious influences. These syntheses matter profoundly because they heal false divisions between religion and science, both truth-seeking endeavors, between morality and instinct, ethics as both practical and idealistic, and between logic and mystery, the universe as both orderly and unfathomable. As Hegel observed, truth unfolds through this very tension of opposites. Our human genius lies precisely in holding these apparent contradictions simultaneously. This transcendent aspiration, our pull toward the divine, the just, the beautiful, serves as the bridge between these poles. It explains why we create art beyond utility, debate morality as if objective good exists, despite knowing its cultural roots, and describe mathematical equations as elegant. The ultimate synthesis isn't compromise but elevation, recognizing ourselves as biological yet spiritual, rational yet mystical, constrained yet free. The challenge isn't to choose sides but to live creatively within these tensions, where, as Niels Bohr observed, profound truths often stand in paradoxical relation to one another. This dialectical understanding liberates us from dogmatic thinking while honoring both our material nature and spiritual yearnings. It suggests that our highest truths emerge not from eliminating contradictions, but from embracing them as complementary aspects of a greater whole. A realization that has animated humanity's greatest philosophical, scientific, and artistic achievements throughout history. We often treat our beliefs like fragile glass sculptures, precious, rigid, and terrified of cracks, when we should hold them more like clay, moldable, playful, and unafraid of imperfection. Intellectual rigidity doesn't make you more principled, it just makes you more brittle. Consider the atheist who shouts, "Oh my God," when startled. On the surface, this seems like hypocrisy, a contradiction between belief and language. But in reality, it reveals something profound. Human beings aren't equations demanding perfect consistency. We're messy, contextual creatures who borrow, play, and adapt. That atheist isn't betraying their lack of faith by exclaiming, "God damn it!" They're simply using the emotional shorthand of their culture, playing with language rather than being enslaved by it. This tension points to a deeper pattern in how we handle cognitive dissonance. That mental discomfort when our actions and beliefs don't align. Typically, we fall into one of two traps: the zealot's path of purging every inconsistency, like the atheist who scolds others for saying "bless you," or the dogmatist's path of ignoring contradictions altogether, like the believer who rejects challenging scientific evidence. Both approaches share the same fatal flaw, mistaking rigidity for strength. The healthiest alternative is playful conviction, holding beliefs the way we hold a joke, with enough firmness to land, but enough looseness to adapt. Think of the Buddhist monk who laughs at a blasphemous meme, demonstrating enlightenment's fluidity. The scientist who exclaims, "Holy shit," at a breakthrough, reveling in human expression, not endorsing theology. Or the Christian who enjoys secular music about sin, appreciating art beyond dogma. These people aren't being inconsistent. They're being human in the richest sense. The key is learning to hold beliefs lightly without losing them. First, separate core beliefs from cultural debris. Your atheism, "I don't believe in deities," is fundamentally different from linguistic habits. "I can't say God damn it." One matters, the other is just nostalgia. Second, laugh at your own contradictions. The Marxist who loves luxury watches or the fitness guru sneaking midnight pizza aren't betraying their ideals. They're acknowledging that purity is a myth. Third, let language be play, not prison. Saying "bless you" or swearing by gods you don't believe in doesn't weaken your stance. It shows cultural fluency. Here's the liberating realization. The people most secure in their beliefs are the least threatened by contradictions. The devout who chuckle at religious jokes, the skeptics who enjoy tarot readings for fun, The philosophers who debate ideas they don't endorse? These aren't hypocrites, but models of intellectual flexibility. Truth isn't diminished by play. Gravity still works if you joke about floating away. Democracy survives political satire, and your atheism remains intact despite an exasperated, "for God's sake." So hold your beliefs, just don't strangle them. The tighter you grip, the less they breathe and the less they can grow. As Nietzsche quipped, seriousness is the only heresy, a truth he likely remembered whenever his pen ran out of ink and he cursed in God's name like the rest of us.